Welcome to the Spirit Sessions podcast. I'm your guide, Katie Silcox, bringing you your weekly self-love soundbite. Join us where I'll help you find your true spiritual home, where every single aspect of you is holy ground, holy ground, holy ground, holy ground.
This is Spirit Session Podcast with Katie Silcox. Venga chicos, empezamos.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hi everyone, Katie here. This podcast is intended to inspire you, educate you, and most importantly, support you on your journey towards knowing who you really are, that inner self, that inner teacher. I am not a psychologist or a medical doctor and do not offer professional health or medical advice on this podcast. If you are suffering from any kind of psychological or medical issue, please do the right thing and seek help from your qualified health professional. Hello, everyone. We are here with a very special guest. Today, we have on the show Lisa Marie Rankin. She is the author of The Goddess Solution, a practical spiritual guide that teaches women how to apply goddess wisdom to modern day malaise. And we all know about malaise. Where is the malaise? Sex, money, parenting, divorce, and more. She is also a teacher. She's an Ayurvedic Wellness Coach. She's a Shakti School graduate, and she is one of our current Shakti School teachers. She is teaching a course on the goddess and business, and she has what I love the most, which is an MBA from a university, but also her own feminine form practice. Lisa Marie Rankin, welcome. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I mean, you are a woman of many, many talents, and everyone should check out your book, The Goddess Solution, where you really do break down some of these energies and archetypes really well and in a really practical way. And when I read your book, I was like, this is kind of like the healthy, happy, sexy that I tried to put out into the world of making these concepts really palatable and digestible for people so they can apply it to their regular lives. And so I always tell students, people get really, so in Shakti School, there are a number of topics that you can just watch everyone in the room get squirmy, whether it be uncomfortable or yay, I really want to go into this. There's this sense that there's a lot of power in a number of the concepts that we go into. And what you are teaching this week actually in Shakti School is a place where I see especially women get super, super uncomfortable. And that is what we are going to talk about today, which is the topic of money. And so money and really business and leadership and crafting and creating and taking responsibility for your own financial life, whether you are as the CEO of a company or you are someone that for whatever reason, God bless you, you don't have to make a living. And that's also totally valid in this conversation. But before we kick it off on some of the practical things that you've learned and that I've learned around business, why do you think it's so uncomfortable, in particular for women, to talk about money?
That is such a good question. And, it's definitely something that I continue to work on with myself as well. And I think one thing, I think many of us have been raised, like, you're not supposed to talk about money. You can't ask people how much they make. Or I think for women, and I know I remember, like, ooh, you just don't talk about money in public. Like, there was almost some shame about it. And I'm not really sure where that came from. And I don't necessarily know why it's more for women as opposed to it is for men. But then I also think if you're on a spiritual path too, it could be like, well, shouldn't I just be grateful for what I have? I don't want to be greedy. I don't want to have too much. I just need enough to eat and maybe travel a little bit. And we want to condition how much we want the money for. But money is an energy. And I mean, what would be more amazing than to have like a bunch of enlightened women who have money, who can use that money for themselves. Because I do believe too, like I feel like women often want to qualify, like, well, I need money for my family, or I need money so I can help. And those are all good too. And it's also like, I want money because I want to go to fun places and I want to travel and I want to take cool programs and I want pretty clothes. That's good too. So I don't think we also, I think we tend to want to say good money and bad money. And it's more of just like money is an energy.
Yeah. It's the principle of Tantra, neither good nor bad. It's an energy that can be used for things that are useful to your goal or not useful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's dive into like what I see. So one of the reasons, it's not the only reason, but it is one of the reasons I think that women sign up for our program is that they see me, they see our teachers, they see some of the graduates of Shakti schools, Instagrams or websites or mailing lists, and they're like, "Oh my God, I want to do that too." And I think that that's one of the attractors to the school is that personally, I have been able to create this insane life for myself where I'm able to do what I absolutely love, where I feel like I'm serving other people, but I'm also able to pay my bills and live in a comfortable way. And I think that that kind of that might not be something overtly that we state, but I think that is an impetus for at least a big or a half, maybe less than the women. Some women are like, I just want this for me. But I think that speaks to a deeper energy. I want your thoughts around of women who really see the current setup of what's offered in the 9 to 5 corporate work world as just untenable. And there's some
Mhm.
women like myself, I never could have done it, right? But like other women who might be listening to this now are like, I'm in it. And it is intolerable. And it is going against every aspect of my cycles and my femininity and my spirituality. And so, what are your thoughts on the bigger vision that we're actually speaking to today around what you and I might call the feminine way of doing business?
Oh, I love that question so much. And it's one I spend a lot of time thinking about. Now, I was in the corporate world up until I was 43 years old. So, for the majority of my adult life. And as you kind of talked about, it did become untenable. You know, I was away from my children. I couldn't honor my cycles. I was in this boxed building with fluorescent lighting. And this isn't to say that it was all bad. I mean, I got made good money. I was around smart people. There was also some amazing women that, you know, had acted as mentors, but it started to feel very unaligned with what I wanted my life to be. And I think too, as you start to get older, I mean, I was 43, it was like, is this really what I'm going to be doing for the next, you know, X amount of years? So I made some like just kind of dramatic shifts to say, like, I'm doing something else, or at least I'm going to try to do something else. But I also do believe, and it's, I know it's something you teach and something I teach, and I guess I don't want to, I don't know if we're going to go too off topic here, but as women, our physiologies are different. I don't think we are supposed to be in meetings around the clock on Zooms, whether we're bleeding, whether we're not bleeding, whether we're pregnant, whether we have children. I believe that we are creative and we are beyond powerful, but we also need that space for creativity, for healing, for that sense of like magnetizing what it is that we want our life to be. So for me, and I think for a lot of women, especially the women who enroll in the Shakti school, yeah, having that traditional 9 to 5, following this very linear, very masculine path isn't going to feel good in our bodies. And we're likely going to see some both physical and emotional repercussions from it if we stay with that too long. So I think what you've demonstrated and what Shakti School really allows is like there is an alternative, and we're not taught that in school. And until you start diving in, you almost don't even know that it exists. It's like, oh, I got to go to college, I got to get a job, this is what I do. But there's another way to live, and I think that's what a lot of women are starting to wake up to, and I think that's the really exciting part.
I don't think that we're off topic at all. And in fact, if we are, even better. You know, this what this is test is the feminine form. And so
Yeah.
I want to spiral back to what you just said around the physiologies are different. And they are. And I think in our current world, that's like a almost a brave statement to be able to say, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We we are all on a spectrum as women and men, but the physiology is so real. And that's why for
Mhm.
5,000, 10,000, whatever thousands of years, there have been these very specific rituals, and even the whole entirety of time and calendaring was built around this physiology of the
Yes.
feminine. And what I want our listeners to know, and that it's so applicable to Lisa's talk today, is like our hormones go in a 4-week cycle, even when you're not, even when you're perimenopause or menopause, past that, right? So you are 4 different chemical people throughout the month. Men's hormone cycles goes in 24 hours. So guess what, ladies? It peaks at 9 and it's over at 5. And that's when they're ready to go home. Or what else do men love to do? At 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, go to the gym. And that brings their testosterone up a notch again, so they can maybe hang out with their kids and have sex with their wife, right? Like the 9 to 5 was set up probably unconsciously by men for men, and tipping our hat, because me and you love us some men more than anybody
Mhm.
else. This is not, oh, men are bad and they're the patriarchy and they've ruined our reality. It's just to understand that I look at my business calendar through the lens of, when am I going to get my period? Because the days before that and during that, I'm going to be the most low energy. When am I ovulating? Because that's when I'm going to have the most desire to be creative and to be out there and putting things out in the world and being social. And just that one little thing on your calendar can be a game changer, not to mention all the other things you mentioned, pregnancy, etc. And so I want to go to this idea of mindset. You touched on that. This idea, for those of you out there who are listening, whether you're working to start your own business or you are the employee of someone else, you are the CEO of your life. And you mentioned this thing about mindset. I want to go into this idea of mindset as really one, if not the most important thing around beginning to open up the idea of taking more, I don't want to say control, but just more empowerment with how you spend the rest of your one and precious sacred life.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's so important. And lately, like the phrase that I've been using with my community, with whether it's like wellness or really anything that they want to do, starting a career or a creative project, is like, how are you going to show up for your life? Like, we have an opportunity every day. How are we going to actually, are we going to go all in, or are we going to kind of half ass it? Are we going to be too nervous because we're afraid what people are going to say, that girl that was mean to us on high school, if we post something on Instagram? Or are we just going to do it? Right. Like, and it's, I think, and that took me a while too. I remember like the first post I did on Instagram when I started to see my career shift. And I must have like belabored over it for like 3 hours, and like 3 people saw it. And the people I'm thinking and nervous about are people that I don't even talk to anyways. And it's just like, are we going to live for ourselves or for other people? And like, what are we going to do to show up and to take full responsibility for what it is that we want to create, what we want our life to be about? And that doesn't mean it's going to be easy, right? Like, and I'm sure, as you know, and as I know, running a business, doing something that is coloring outside of the lines, it comes with challenges. It is. It's not easy. There are sacrifices. You do have to put yourself in front of people and get judged and get the troll comments, which I'm always like, celebrate those, because that means there's something that you're saying that is resonant. But it's really showing up for your life. What do you want it to be about? And will you take responsibility for it?
So funny. We're going to get to the trolls in a minute, but I want to just staying on this idea. I think that people have this really false understanding about the opportunities. Of course, all of us are born into this life with a certain set of circumstances that we in the tradition would call our karma.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us are born into circumstances that are, objectively speaking, easier. And you and I could spend, a lifetime talking about all of those elements. But what Tantra says is that karma is the wood for the fire of your transformation. That the wood that you have is the exact right fuel for you to burn and become who you're meant to be and serve in the way you're meant to serve. And what I've seen is that So often it is so much more comfortable to stay stuck in an old reality, an old mindset, a family pattern, a lineage pattern, an ethnic pattern, all these patterns. It's easier to stay there, living in your old neighborhood, right? Rather than to break free. There are some people that can't for real circumstances, but
Mhm.
95% of the time, it's about mindset. And I want to give a quick example. I was in Ohio last week and I went into a Chipotle, which is actually a really great place to go eat some Ayurvedic food if you're on the road in Ohio, right? Like Chipotle, you can get like at least some warm rice and beans and veggies and stuff. And so I'm in there, Lisa, and there was this girl and she was amazing. And the person I was with was like, this is her first time in a Chipotle. And we made it like, I was like, yeah, this is awesome. And like, she was so loving. She was so wanted me to have the best Chipotle experience. Chipotle girl, if you're out there listening, better listen up. So I have this experience. Probably this woman was probably in her late 20s, and she was so kind and like the kind of employee you want to hire, right?
Mhm.
And she was working at Chipotle. And I got the food and she handed me like some extra sauces and stuff. And she was like, I just want you to have the best stuff, right? And I went over to the table and I wrote down my name and my email and I gave her the website and I walked back over and I handed it to her and I'm like, I run a women's empowerment school and we train women to become health coaches. You can change your career and make money and blah blah blah. And she grabbed the napkin and so happy and she goes, I'm going to reach out because I don't want to always be here chopping onions. And I'll never forget that. So many of us, whether we're working at Chipotle or we're working in a six-figure job, we feel like we're out there chopping onions in our life.
Yeah.
And it was just so raw, her response. And I never heard from her. And maybe I will, but you got to write that night. You got to write the next day. There are
Yeah.
only a certain amount of these opportunities that come along. And I'm not saying, oh, we have this great school or whatever. And I said, I'll give you a full scholarship. Like that's how much.
Wow.
Yeah, I told her we have scholarships. So it wasn't even
Yeah.
it wasn't a money thing. And I bring that up not to make her bad or wrong, just to say there was this opportunity. And so often it's just easier to stay home and chop onions than to actually
Mhm.
do what, Lisa, you know it takes to get a book published, to start a business. So I think this really is about identifying your passion and
Yeah.
becoming so freaking committed to it. So will you speak to how you help people, women, I'm sure mostly, get clear on what that is? Because I have it, you have it, but a lot of people like don't even know what that is.
That's so true. A lot of people don't because, I often say like, okay, I help people like optimize their health and really kind of enliven their spirits and they can do all the good things that they want in their lives. And I also do get a lot of women like, well, can you help me figure that out? I don't really know what I want. And, at first that was a little challenging for me. And I think this kind of comes back to like honoring the feminine, like going back to like, well, what do you desire? What turns you on? What lights you up? Like, what would you do if money and time weren't an issue? And
Right.
sometimes people would be like, I don't know. I like to read. I like to listen to podcasts. And it's like, okay, well, that's a start. Like, but what do you like listen to? And I like to think that people like, and I think especially for women, and it kind of goes back to money where we don't want to ask for too much. It's not that everyone's dreaming too big, it's that people aren't dreaming big enough. And I think part of that is that there's fear of disappointed. Well, what if I say I want this like great business and then I can't do it or it doesn't come to fruition? Like that's going to be embarrassing. So I think sometimes we're afraid to say like, oh, I want this fantastic relationship with great sex. What if I don't get it? Right. So I think part of it is there's that sense of vulnerability and get, getting I don't even say clear because I think we're always evolving about what we desire and what we want, but at least owning it, becoming a little bit more shameless about what it is that we want, even if we have to try it on for a little while. Like, even if we're not sure, like, let's imagine, like, what would it look like if you had your own, health coaching business and you weren't working at Chipotle? What could that look like? And like, how would you spend your time? Who are the work to serve? So I think sometimes it's like a little bit of acting. It's a little bit of imagining. What could that be? And it's also like almost kindling a flame because there's so many women that have kind of like, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to work. I'm supposed to get married. I'm supposed to just raise my children, that they do lose touch. And I do think that that's part of, we're reading the heroine's journey with my community. And it's like part of it is like coming back to that feminine and honoring the spark, the desire.
Mm. That's so important. I think I remember Elizabeth Gilbert speaking about this passion thing and how it's very easy for us that really do have it to think, well, why don't you just say it and do it, right? I heard
Yeah.
Oprah talking about it too, and she's like, just figure out what you want to do and do it. And it's like, yeah, you're Oprah, yeah, you're Lisa, you're Katie, and like you're Elizabeth Gilbert, where it's like there are people on the planet who have a very clear sense of their lower level, I'll call it dharma, how I'm meant to show up and I want to serve in the world, right? And there are other people that don't have that. And maybe opening ourselves to the idea of like a bigger service than a certain job, it's an energetic. So like
Mm.
there's nothing wrong with staying at Chipotle and cutting onions if you're in that flow of Shakti and you're in that
Yeah.
flow of the fulfillment of the heart. And I think that really is the bigger thing. So let's say that people are listening to this and they are like, no, 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 I got it. I do want to kind of do this. I do want to serve my community. I do want to create a business, whether it be in health service or whatever feminine circles that we run in. It could be something like making honey, candles, I don't know, right? Like it can be so many things. One of the things that you talk about in our course at the Shakti School is learning to identify who you serve, your niche. And so what can you really say about how people can determine that?
I think I may have learned this from you as well too, is one way is like you generally, at least what I've seen with myself and others is that we want to help people with things that we've gone through, you know, whether it's like anxious attachment. Like I want to help people with like their relationships because I know how it feels to be anxiously attached, right? Like that could be something. Or I want to help people who, you know, want to leave their 9 to 5 jobs, or, you know, I'm 48 now. Like a lot of the women that I work with are in their late 40s and 50s. Like, let's talk about like hormonal imbalance, and not just the hormonal imbalance as you age, but also kind of just that shift of like that you're starting to turn inward and you're starting to want to connect more with the feminine and more with the spirituality. So I would say one, it's what interests you should be your niche, right? Because that's going to be what you're most passionate about. Anything that you have evolved from, whether it was something with, you know, spiritual, emotional, or health, that could be a good sign as well too. But just thinking about what it is that you gravitate towards. I think it can be like, but I want to help everyone, and I know that these practices could help everyone. In the You probably could help everything, and a lot of what we would say for one group, right, would apply for any other thing. Like I think we would, you know, but it gets watered down. So especially like as a new coach, it's like pick something specific that, you know, you really think that you could help and would enjoy helping them too. Like it's something that you are interested in learning more about, that you could go all in with.
Hmm. It's also, I would add to that, Lisa, who can hear you,
Ooh, good. Yes.
because it's very different when I speak to a group of women than if I speak to a group of big old men, you know, and it's like,
Mhm.
I remember we had some women who were in the military come to Shakti School and then afterwards devote themselves to war veterans. Cool. Me and you could go do that and help people. But do you know how much more effective and powerful? Like she's been to Afghanistan. She
Yeah.
knows how it feels to come back after war and feel like normie society doesn't get you, and the loneliness and all of the depression and PTSD. Like that's been her experience. And I do think that there's something of value in feeling that sense of belonging when you can connect with a mentor that looks like you, that knows your,
Mm.
that, you know, I think I love me some Midwestern and Southern belles because, like, that's where I'm from, you know? And I think not that it's limited to that, but there's so much there in being able to speak someone's language. And um, So getting into some of the practical things. So let's say a woman out there is listening. First of all, of course, she should come to Shakti School where we're going to teach you all the basics of Ayurveda, but you are our business mama. And so let's say you have this idea, maybe you did go and do the Shakti School program. Now what? How do I go from having a passion or having a knowledge base and moving that into an expression? How would they even begin?
Oh, good question. Um, One is to begin before you're ready, I think is
Yes, thank
the
you.
best thing.
Yes.
Because I think like as women, and I mean there's countless studies on this too, that we want to like get everything perfect before we even share an idea. And it's like, no, just start talking about it. And people are like, well, I can't talk about it yet. I haven't found my voice. You're only going to find your voice if you use it. So just it's going to be dirty, it's going to be messy, it's going to be awkward, it's going to be uncomfortable, and do it because that's the fun part. That's where the growth is going to come. So one would be just kind of just starting to put your ideas out there, whether it's social media. Even if you get no views, you're just getting practice of articulating what it is, who it is that you serve, what it is that you do. I would try some maybe free workshops, maybe try to get a client or two on, a couple of clients. And even we were talking about money, and I do feel very strongly that women need to charge what it is that they're worth, and maybe even a little bit more than they feel comfortable with, right? To start breaking that through. And we need to develop a skill set first. We need to have it's good to have some testimonials. So if at the beginning you're like, for the first couple of months, I'm going to try to like work with people one-on-one, either at, for less money than I plan to charge, but just getting in the game, however you need to get into the game, whether it's you're asking to coach, friends and family to begin with, but sharing your ideas, getting out there, and also initiating yourself into it. And this is something that I feel like I've struggled with, where I kept thinking like, well, once I have this many women enrolled, or once I can do this, then I'll feel like a real business owner. And I kept having this, and the bar kept changing too. And I was like, okay, then it's finally like, who are you waiting to say you are a business owner? Here's your little business crown. Like, you just initiate yourself. Like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm about. This is how I can help.
CEO, no, she better don't, is what RuPaul used to say. CEO, yes, she did. Like, you
Yeah.
have to, that is huge. It's also the Woody Allen effect. It's the fake it till you make it. It's the
Yeah.
imposter syndrome. Like, Woody Allen makes a movie a year and most of them suck, and then you get an Annie Hall, right? It's like, I laugh so hard
That's
looking back at my younger self. And I was just like, writing something and then putting it out there like brilliant print, and it would just be full of typos and errors, and it's like, I'm proud of that part of myself, and I
mm,
really want everyone to listen and hear me. Lisa Marie and I are Lisa's a friend, as I know Lisa a little bit. She and I share some star energy. We are not insecure people. There's a part of us, you might be out there like, well, these two, it's really easy. They're so self-secure. And it's like, no, actually, there are deep parts of us that are insecure. And
mm,
by actually reorienting the mechanism from, oh my God, they're looking at me and this is about me, which is actually a very egoic perspective,
yeah.
to OMG, look at how many people I get to serve. Look at how many hearts I get to melt. Look at how many homes I might bring a little bit of more peace into, a little bit more love. And like that, when you get clear on the fact that you're actually a servant to your work, the universe does line up all the forces of nature to help you. And it's true. It's magic. Like, I never had an agent. I never had a publisher. I wrote Healthy, Happy, Sexy because I thought people might need it. And I think we get so caught in step 8, 9, and 10 that we've skipped step 1. And I love that idea, Lisa, of an initiation involving
Yeah.
the open-hearted surrender of your life to something bigger than you.
Yeah.
Now it's exciting, right? Like, how many of us want to give money, time, and energy to people who are in service to some great cause? We're actually starved for that. So
Mhm.
let's shift gears. So you obviously, let's just go through a quick thing. You need to figure out who you're serving. You need to figure out what you're doing to serve, what problem you're going to help solve. Getting an email list is key. Speak
Yes.
to that. I think that that's just our email list is our gold.
Yeah.
How do people get an email list?
So yeah, the email list is the most important part because it's like that is what you would say is like your warm audience. Those are the people that are like, sign me up. And I always like talk about when, at some of my workshops and I'll share your book, Healthy, Happy, Sexy. I'm like, I somehow found this book and I feel like your book had a really transformative effect on my life. I immediately joined your email list. I learned about Shakti School. I didn't even know really what it was, but I was like, I'm in, right? Like it's just so that's how like the people on our email list are the people that want to be part of our sale, that want to be, want to learn more from us. So that's really important. And I think we spend a lot of time on social media and that's not quite as important. And I think I actually think social media is great for practicing using your voice, for getting clear on your message. Use it as a tool for you. But your email list is going to be your potential client base. So we can get an email list. One is offering something of value for free. And it's something not like a Dinacharya checklist, right? We can get those all over the internet. It has to be like something that people would be willing to pay for. What I have found most effective is doing like live workshops, live events. And maybe you're starting off, and you're like, okay, I'm going to teach you in this workshop about Dinacharya. And you don't want to give everything away, but you want people to know, trust, and like you. So for me, I think building the email list through live events has been the most effective, but maybe you have an ebook or, maybe you have a meditation series that you want to offer or, a video training series, but you're putting something out there to the world saying, I have something of value. You can use this to get to know me and like me. And in exchange, I get your email list and we get to create this relationship with each other. So it's not just like, I want to collect your email and I'm going to give you this thing that I don't think is particularly valuable, but like I'm going to give you something that I think is going to have an effect for the better for you, that you are going to find value in exchange for your email. And that's the beginning of a relationship.
Yeah, I want to just highlight what Lisa just said for anyone out there listening.
Yeah.
There's this false idea that I see our students at Shakti School get super caught on, and you're going to go into this with them this week. It's
Yeah.
that I don't have a big social media following. How am I going to get emails? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I didn't even get on Instagram till a few years ago. I went door to door salesman, not literally, but like I did live events everywhere in my little town
Mm.
when I lived in San Francisco. And then that just slowly built up. And I took a piece of paper, notebook paper, and just said, hey, if you want to be on my mailing list to learn about other things, or like your idea is even better, like say, if you join my mailing list, I'll give you this thing. That is how I built that thing. And I started when I was young, but you can start anytime. And you don't need, it's better to have 250 great, loyal, interested people on your list than 250,000 trolls or
Yeah.
people that don't care, and yeah, I just think that is such a hurdle for young women to get through. Like, I don't have a big social media following. Social media should be like in Ayurveda. The pulse is the last part of the diagnostics. You look at 200 other things. Like the social media is actually an expression of the thing that's already been created.
Right. I completely agree. I think people spend way too much time like on social media, crafting their posts, then looking once they launched it, how many likes did I get, getting frustrated if they're not getting enough likes. And especially if you're starting a business, that can't be the focus. You have to be connecting with people to actually understand what their problems are, what language they're using to describe their problems, and what you have to offer to
And
help them.
let's not forget good old word of mouth.
Yeah.
When I first started doing one-on-one health consultations with my Ayurveda, I did everyone in my family, friends, colleagues, and I got my chops and I got practice and I got feedback. And I think that was free. It was a part of the
Yeah.
course, but over time that starts to open and develop you. And when you help someone, they will tell someone. And word of mouth is, I don't know the exact statistic for us, but it's not low. Like maybe at least a fourth of everyone that comes to the new year of Shakti School, it's because they heard about it from another woman. And I think we forget about that because we're so caught in social media, but word of mouth still is the best advertisement for your stuff.
Yeah, and I found with word of mouth too, you actually get people that are really invested in it. It's almost like it's not just like throwing things out to the wind and seeing who bites. It's like you get even more. I don't know, qualified leads sound so salesy, but you get people who are more likely to be a good match for you because it's like we're always thinking like, oh, will they like me? Do they want my stuff? Will they want to work with me? But we want to make sure they're a good match for us as well too, that we can actually help them and there is a good energetic exchange as well too. And I think that is where that word of mouth is even more valuable because there's already been a vetting process.
We do a prayer at the beginning as we launch our year. Please let the women that need to be here that are meant to be in this program find us, and please let everyone who is not be able to find us. Like it's
Right.
better to have way less people and then be the right people. And on that note, I just want to we're also aware of social media's negative effects, and I personally even have really worked to curb any kind of addictive tendency towards that. It's not something that I particularly feel addicted to, but I do see the way that it can harm me in terms of what I put out. And lately I've been like really putting out my heart and really putting out my silliness and my authenticity, if you will. Not that I wasn't before, but I've like doubled down in a way on just realness. And it's a little more vulnerable, but our social media is doing a lot more and better in the sense of engagement, since it's just been like, all right, like this is what I'm into right now in terms of Ayurveda. But the cruelty, the negativity, I want to say this the right way. The way in which our current culture uses social media as an outlet for their own unintegrated feelings
Mm.
is just so apparent to me right now that it almost feels like a no-go zone for me. And yet I use it to educate women on Ayurveda and will continue to do that. But I'm curious about your current vibe check, because if I were in my 20s or 30s trying to start something on social media, I have so much compassion and sympathy for the culture that is just so set up right now to stifle truth and to stifle women's voices and their real feelings, and to get us all sort of in an automatonic like state of all agreeing with the same thing.
Mm.
Ironically, if you do, you get hated by everyone else who want you to agree with their way, and it just feels like a war zone. And so what are your feelings on this?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I definitely, especially as you said, even like for younger people, because I mean, social media is like relatively new to me. I'm pretty Gen X. I didn't grow up as a child, thank God, with social media. We had enough problems. Like when I think
Right.
of like the bullies and the mean girls, I can't even imagine that being online. Um, I think I think using it as a tool for you, for this is the message that I have to share. And if someone doesn't like it, that's okay. I don't know if on Instagram you can delete I can't remember if you can delete or hide the bad, but I wouldn't get into it. I know I've done that on Facebook and stuff. I don't remember on Instagram, but it would be more like, I mean, hey, this is your profile. This is your page. You don't need to engage in hate talk. You don't need to like argue with the naysayers and say like, no, but this is what I meant, or this is why I'm right. Like, who cares? Like, I would not.
Oh, do not engage trolls.
Yes, like, I mean, I would not give them one more bit of your energy than it takes to click like hide comment, right? Like, it's your page, your house. People can't come to your house and put on whatever sign they want, and I know some people might disagree, like, oh, free speech. It's like, sure, you do that on your profile, do that on your page. This is a platform where I'm going to share my message. If somebody wants to have like an interesting dialogue and ask a question, or something, but you get the sense of whether it's kind of just yucky and hateful or not. And I would just spend as little energy as possible. And I know it's hard. Like I remember when I first had my blog and people would, say like they disagreed with something or this was stupid or this. And I remember being so upset. And my boyfriend would be like, honey, I think that like if you want to continue to do this for your living, you're going to have to get a little bit thicker
Thicker
skin. You
skin,
can't,
yeah.
you're not going to be able to get upset and like, why would he write this? Why did she say this? And, it's just, so for me, it's like, you can look at it if maybe, and if it's just pure troll, hey, just hide it.
So I have a huge block list, and I think it's funny to mention this to people because I always, when I say this to people, like normal people who aren't in the like goddess wellness, yoga, meditation, spirituality world, they're always so shocked. Normal people, let's call them, like, they're like, what? I thought
Normal people.
I thought yoga girls were so nice. And I'm just cracking up, right? And I'm like, no. The yoga and spirituality world is just the same as any other world, only in some ways worse because it's using spiritualized language, right? And so this one funny thing is like when I first started out, I remember being so dumb and naive and wonderful, right? In my naivety. And I remember someone writing me on Facebook back when that was like the place, right? I wrote something about using a Vitamix. They're like, and I've mentioned this on the podcast, clearly it affected me. And it was like, you are everything wrong with Ayurveda in the world today. And of course, I was like 29 and I was like, oh, okay. Yes, sir. Like Inanna at the gate, who do you think you are? And so I go to this person's page and it's like, this guy living in Marin County, like just this complete, honestly, white dude in the middle of nowhere, like writing me about Ayurveda. And I remember feeling so upset that I was everything wrong with Ayurveda. And then I sat with it and did the work around it. And then over time, you do start to develop a thicker skin because that was not the last time that I've received things, and certainly many, many worse things. And so the thicker skin builds up, but also we can really utilize those negative quote comments to really tap into the part of us that feels threatened by them. Like the unchanging in us is not threatened by it. So the curious, fun thing that you can do with like negative commentary or even just feedback and criticism that's hard to take, it's like, what is it actually threatening? Right. And we call that your ego, right? And the ego wants to maintain itself, right? And so in a way, they can be these wonderful ways of like opening actually and burning parts of ourselves. But yeah, it is, I will not candy coat it. Being out there with your story, with your message as a business person and a brand is brutal. If you are saying something that matters, you will inevitably, my teacher says, fame and fortune, beloved one day, hated the next. Like we see it all the time. And I think that is something for people to consider,
Yeah. You just said something that I think, I often have written a lot about like how relationships, are really a great guide to our spiritual practice because they act as a mirror. But I also think growing a business is also that great guide because again, you get comments. I mean, there's some things people could say and it's going to roll right off because you're like, oh, that was so stupid. But then there'll be things that hurt. And I'll be like, oh, why did that hurt? Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe I should have studied in India. Like that's for me because I'm like, I've never been to India. So, if someone said like, she doesn't know it might hurt a little bit, right? And it's like, so you also have to look because some things will roll off and it's like, oh, okay.
What sticks?
What sticks and what am I believing about myself? And, maybe that's a good opportunity from like Byron Katie's work. Is this even true, right? Can I even prove this is true? But we can also use that to, look at areas where we're holding back or where we have these beliefs.
So I think we should close, Lisa, with a thing I like to do at the end, if you were driving down the highway and you knew there was a big billboard that everyone would see when they drove by, that you could put one message for them, what would it say?
Well, that's a good one. It's actually one of Pema Chodron's messages, but it's what I would like to share with everyone. It would be perhaps the best spiritual practice is to lighten up.
Lighten up. I love that. Lighten up, literally
Yeah.
and figuratively.
Yes.
So, Lisa, tell everyone where they can find you. We'll obviously put the link to your website in the show notes. Everyone, if you don't have the Goddess Solution, check it out. We've loved having you on Spirit Sessions. Remember, Lisa's one of our teachers in Shakti School. If you haven't checked that out, get your booty in. We start January 17th. What do you have going on that you want people to know about?
Sure. Well, people can find me lisamarierankin.com or Instagram lisamarie.rankin. And right now I have a Ayurveda program for Divine Feminine Healing, which is a 10-week program. And I also have a Divine Feminine membership Enlivened, which is really great. We do seasonal celebrations, book clubs, monthly workshops. So lots of and just beautiful, amazing, juicy, inspiring women. So lots of stuff like that. I always say, nourish your body, enliven your spirit. That's what we're all about in my community.
I love it. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for being a part of Shakti School and for being on the show today. I'm sure people are going to take something from this and hopefully spark something that may spark a business.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. Love this conversation. And I can't wait to be in Shakti School and see all of those beautiful women next week. So
Thank you, Lisa. A big special thanks to Kevin Carlisle of Goodbye Gemini, who wrote this beautiful podcast music, and to DJ Juan Pablo Jimenez in southern Spain for mixing it and making it magic.